All right. I got to do a proper introduction, everybody. Everybody? Hello, YouTube. No, you have my voice cracked. Hello, YouTube. If you've been watching Mom Piece for a while, you might think that's what the channel was built for. And while I'm very excited for it, the channel was kind of built for me to do whatever it is I want to do. And a thing I realized I want to do, because of a stream where I complained about the creature design in Pal World feeling kind of soulless, was make a critter game. I started to think about all these things I would do in a critter game and realized, hang on a second, I've studied game design, not professionally, unfortunately, but I've studied game design on my own for a long time. I am a graduate with a writing degree. I run an art stream. I have a lot of the skills and experience I need to be able to be part of a team that builds something and to lead the creative design for that project. So while I don't have the programming expertise I'm going to need, and I'm going to be building a team for it, I am committing myself to building a critter game. These are our starting critters. The concept of the game is you are playing a summoner. That's you. Look, a summoner. And you at the beginning of the game are going to get to choose between two critters who join you on your journey. The two options you have are over here, Familiar and Rumblin. Familiar is based off of the concept of a familiar of a mage with a big witch's hat, and Rumblin is based off of a hobgoblin and represents the martial side of TTRPGs, which is one of the big visual inspirations. We've had a ton of fun. People on stream have been coming in, helping me come up with design ideas and refine the ideas here. I love creating designs, and chat has made it so much more fun by giving a ton of concepts to bounce off of. The big aesthetic inspiration for the game is trying to mix TTRPG energy with modern Americana. The game is inspired by the Americana vibes of the Pacific Northwest, both Canada and the United States. Canada has Americana vibes. I can't explain it, but it is true. Our main character here, you can see the design is meant to evoke the shape language of a mage from a fantasy game while having the clothing be made of components from modern Americana clothing. Let's talk some of the cool lore that we have. This guy is your main character. They are an elf. This is one of the fantasy worlds. It's a thing I like in fantasy worlds where humans are kind of the default. Most people are them. You don't really know by how much in the game because you're in a human-dominated area. Most of the people you interact with are humans because that's who lives in this zone. Elves in this world are interesting because once they hit adulthood, physically, they're only about like 4'5" usually. You're playing the elf equivalent of like a 25-year-old because your character is at this point just under 5 feet tall. But a cool thing to kind of go from a North Pole elf to a Lord of the Rings elf is elves continue to get taller and taller the longer they live until they eventually die of old age. And because elves don't really age, dying of old age in this world is just your body becoming more and more susceptible to wear and tear because it's harder to maintain such a tall body. So elves will continue to just get bigger and bigger very slowly over the course of their lives. So by the time an elf is like 400 or 500, they might be 8 feet tall, which we are going to see in one of the designs in this game, which I'm a huge fan of. Your main character is basically, like I said, elf 25-year-old. You're just under 5 feet tall. You're just a little guy. One day, if you live for hundreds of years, they'll be huge. And a cool thing I decided to kind of, exactly like he left, cool thing that I decided to explain this cool oversized coat we're using for a hoodie is that elves kind of like to become attached to garments and will often buy really oversized clothes when they're young so that they can keep up with it, magically maintaining it for their entire life. So the idea is, if this character lives long enough, one day this will just be a hoodie that fits them, and maybe even become too small eventually and be like something they have to wear as a little cape. But for the time being, it's this giant oversized shawl. Your life expectancy is your shirt size. Exactly. I don't know. I find little details like that so interesting and fun to work with, and it adds a lot of texture to the designs you make. Stella Wrangler, that's exactly, it's the strategy. Prepping for life with oversized clothing. Let's talk a bit more about some of the visual design we've got. The Summoners Guild is the main infrastructure of the game. It's a group your character is part of because the magical gauntlet you use to summon and bind creatures is only usable with training from the Summoners Guild. And their color, or at least the color of this arm of the guild in the Pacific Northwest setting of this world, their official color is purple. So everyone who's associated with the guild is going to use purple in their design scheme, and it's a way of differentiating them from non-guild members. Is purple is going to be reserved for guild members in design. I like it because purple has both a magical feeling and a royal feeling, which makes them feel like they have some importance and authority. The way that I see the Summoners Guild working in this world is they teach you how to use creatures, bind them to your will, partner with them, make them your friends, etc., etc., etc. They have a license to travel with dangerous creatures and are often seen as like this group of world savers, because whenever there's a monster up to problems, no one's better at dealing with monsters than them. However, it's not like Pokemon trainers where everybody is one. Fighting other summoners in the game is going to be pretty rare. Most of your combat with other people is going to be like fighters and bandits and rogues and wizards, because summoning is one particular method of fighting in this world, because it's like inspired by a TTRPG. So a lot of the people you encounter and interact with are going to be non-summoners. My big thing when I'm looking for people to partner with for anything is passion. I think passion makes better art than anything. Like, in my opinion, while talent and hard work are so important, I think that someone who is a better artist than someone else will produce less engaging artwork than a slightly worse artist who has a lot of passion. You might notice that despite this not being a One Piece stream, One Piece does affect how I see the world a lot. Like, that is a very Luffy attitude. The Summoners Guild is made up of licensed summoners. Does that imply the villain summoners are unlicensed? Green Entertainer, here's the interesting thing. Because the guild is in control of a lot of stuff, not really. Even the rival character who's not a member of the guild challenges their exam to receive a license. It's just because they didn't like pay guild dues, they wouldn't get their own gauntlet. The rival of the game, you know what? Let's open her design to talk about this really quick. I'm going to open designs as we talk about stuff so that people can see what we're talking about. So the rival of the game is a character who's sort of the archetype of one level in every class. She doesn't like to just do one thing. She doesn't like to be a specific type of person. You are a prodigal summoner. You are a summoner with prodigal energy. You can do things other people can't do. This person is hard work, no talent, and wants to do everything. There's no natural aptitude. She just puts in the effort to learn everything. She's a bit of a fighter. She hits things with a sword. She's a bit of a summoner. She can only control one critter, whereas you can control two at a time. So she needs to be on the front line with her critters getting things done. She can cast spells, and she's enough of an artificer that she was able to recover a broken gauntlet from the guild's dumpster and put it back together to become a summoner. She is doing everything she can to be the most talented person, and that's kind of what makes her a fun rival for the game, is you, because the game is about summoning, represent the best summoner, the person with the most natural ability. Yeah, a 1 in 100 year type versus Rock Lee, absolutely. Except instead of Rock Lee being like, I'm going to practice this one thing, she's like, I am going to practice a little bit of everything and piece it together into a combo. So when you fight her throughout the game, at first she feels very clumsy and like she doesn't have synergies in what she's doing, but by the end of the game she's going to be mixing a bunch of weak abilities together into a very potent combination by covering a lot of bases and being adaptable. And I think that's a lot of fun for the rival character to have. And I think it's also something that when you're making a game, you can't make that be as fun to play because people want powerful options. She should have a diverse team, but the issue is she can only control one at a time, because controlling two creatures at a time is very difficult for summoners to do, and she just didn't get the training. She challenged the exam by self-teaching herself how to control one critter, and then to beat the exam did the other parts herself. Just with her own physical aptitude. I love her design. Something you'll notice about this game is everybody's meant to evoke a aesthetic of a musical genre. So you evoke hip hop because I thought that was fun to mix with a mage aesthetic. She evokes punk, and each character also is meant to evoke a type of fantasy character. So she's meant to evoke punk and barbarian. Those are the two energies she's putting together. She is meant to look like the shape language of a rough and tumble barbarian with the modern aesthetics of punk music. And I think that's very fun. Is her name Multi? Her name is Gemma. She goes by Gem, but her name is Gemma. She should change weapons as you progress through the game. That's a really good idea. Like, she's learning fighting styles. I think that's a great idea. I absolutely want to include that. Is the protag mute? The protag's not mute, but it's going to be a thing where like other characters are going to have vocalizations and your character won't. I don't know. That just feels like a nostalgic hit of old RPGs to me, is when other characters have their little, like, a text box comes up and they're like, alrighty then, for whatever they're saying, but you just select text options and that's all. So the character in lore, not mute, from the player perspective, will be mute because it's that idea that you're the one saying it. His dialogue is muffled by the hoodie. It's actually a very funny idea. You're right.